The Six-Day War started in 1967 between Egypt and Israel. Many believe this was a continuation of the first two wars within the Arab-Israeli conflict. One source says, quote, specifically, the war stemmed from Egypt's decision to expel United Nations troops from the Sinai Peninsula and blockade Israel's port of Eilat. Under international law, an act of war in addition to belligerent Arab threats to destroy Israel. End quote. The Six-Day War was largely known for reshaping the Middle East. Other precursors to the war consist of lack of government stability in Syria. One source seeks to emphasize the role of Syria in causing the Six-Day War because of the Neo-Ba'ath regime in 1966. It is believed that if the Ba'ath coup had not occurred, that Syria may not have entered into the conflict. One source claims the Syrian regime went blindly into the war despite military unpreparedness and a lack of political and military cooperation with other Arab countries and with the Soviets. These political and military issues between Syria and Egypt are what helped contribute to force President Nasser to enter a war he did not want to get involved in. In May of 1967, the Egypt blockade had been announced with a clear opinion that Israel must act immediately. With conflicts going on regarding opportunities to annihilate the Jewish state and destroying the Egyptian army, a source says either way the war should open with a surprise attack. On May 27th, cabinet discussions became compromised as 9 members were in favor of a preemptive first strike and 9 members opposed it. They continued discussion and reconvened with a message from U.S. President Johnson that persuaded Israel to give the U.S. more time to resolve the crisis diplomatically. So on May 28th, the decision was made to continue military standoff. During this time, the political pressure was growing as well as public dissatisfaction, so Eshkol, Israel's prime minister, wanted to inform his generals of the international background and political implications. A source claims Eshkol suffered from poor eyesight and could not read his handwriting of the message, as he was on a live radiocast, so an interpreter came to correct it. But the interpreter was wrong, and the whole nation was listening to false information. This was a huge mistake, and the people wanted the prime minister voted out for his incompetence. However, Eshkol was reluctant to wage this war without an ally, but was sure that the war was inevitable. After the speech miscommunication, Israel was left feeling hopeless for peace. At this time, there were many arguments going on, but one general argued that Israel was capable of destroying the Egyptian army and that the lobbying was presenting Israel as weak and a helpless nation. Eshkol disagreed and responded with a disposition on the meaning of deterrence. He claimed they needed a long breath and patience, and the very meaning of deterrence is a long breath. He wanted to prevent war rather than a preemptive strike. Above all, Eshkol believed it was his duty to prevent a war by an international solution to ending the blockade. There were newspaper articles published with the opinions that they should not engage in war unless Israel had international backing. The war eventually broke out in Israel and ended on June 10th. The strike took place on June 6th against Egypt along with Israeli threats of the realization of peace with Egypt, because peace kills the Zionist dream of a Jewish-only Greater Israel. The major differences between pre- and post-1967 was the destruction of Gaza's natural resources and ability to trade. Before the war, there was no occupation, no checkpoints, no dodging bullets from Israeli military snipers, no seeking shelter from the steel rain of incoming Hellfire missiles or from deafening sonic booms. Tanks did not parade in the streets and bulldozers did not touch people's homes and kill them. Fishermen were able to freely fish off of the Gaza coast, and farmers could grow their crops. Children could attend school, and people could get married. Families grew, and business prospered. However, this all changed after the preemptive strike. The 1967 is described as an aggression and a war of choice. It was started under false pretenses as the people's lives drastically changed from freedom to oppression in less than a week. After the war, almost everything was under Israeli occupation. Israeli currency was enforced, and people were issued curfews in order to do a census. They were only able to travel to and from the Jordan. When the Egyptian troops massed on the border with Israel and imposed a naval blockade of Israel's southern port, the Israelis launched back with their strike, and after days of fighting, Israel gained control, causing many Palestinians to participate in violent uprisings. These tensions even went so far as between Egyptian Muslims and Christians because of Egypt's loss in the war, causing there to be violent episodes of marred interreligious relations well into the 21st century. A German journalist asked if a better future was possible between Israel and the Arab countries. It was said that it depended on Egypt, and that peace with Egypt would be possible soon if the Russians lent their assistance. Much of the aftermath of the war regarding the relations between the Muslims and Christians deals with a lot of colonization, and Franz Fanon suggested that colonization takes place in many ways, with religion being one of them. He argued that decolonization must be a violent struggle, which is a tactic that Israelis use to gain control over Egypt. Israel, however, did not desire the war, but rather sought a political solution to the crisis. Israel's main goal was to forcefully press for negotiated peace with the Palestinians and to lead politics. The war returned Jews to their biblical borders as they regained security and historical reclamation.